Hi, this is Alan Gleason for Crossfadr. In this video, I'm going to look at using iZotope's Neutron 2, an innovative mixing and analysis tool, as a channel strip. In the hardware domain on an analog desk or in a rack-mounted version, a channel strip contains the functionality you need to shape and sonically sculpt the audio passing through it. In the digital domain in a DAW, a channel features no processing by default, and you add devices as you need them. The advantage of a channel strip is that you can immediately grab the control you need to produce the desired result and stay in the creative flow. In this video, I will spend less time on features that are common to channel strip plugins and focus on features and details that make Neutron 2 unique. So I've got a rough arrangement here, and I've applied a Neutron 2 to each track. There's no other processing on any of the other tracks yet, just a rough arrangement. So I'll start off with the kick, and I'll call up Neutron. So this is the area here that I'm going to be focusing on, and it features a gate, an equalizer, 2 compressors, an exciter, and a transient shaper. Not that you have to use all of these at the same time, but they're there available when you need them. When you load the plugin and you've nothing turned on, it doesn't use any processing power. So you can maybe set it up in a template where you have this device already inserted, so that when you need one of the devices, whether it be the gate, equalizer, compressor, exciter, or transient shaper, it's there to call upon. I'll start off by turning on the gate. And on each one of these modules at the top here, they all have this slider on it, which is kind of like a dry wet control, where when it's fully up to the top, you're hearing the processed output of that particular section, and when it's down, you're hearing the dry input. So I'll turn this up here and I'll bring down the threshold on my signal. So I've got the usual controls here. Control that you don't usually see on gates, you see it more on hardware gates, is this hysteresis here. And what this is useful for is for the release section, or when the gate is actually closing down. Sometimes you get an effect known as chatter, where the gate is opening and closing very quickly, and by turning this up you can kind of smooth out that effect. But I don't really need this here on this analog sound. You notice that a lot of the sections in Neutron 2, they're multi-band, meaning that you can process more than one frequency band at a time. So in this one here, I've got a mid band and a high band. So I can set the crossover between these sections. I've also got an input filter, which when I turn this on, I can set the area of the signal that is actually causing the gate to open and close. So if I click on the solo there, I can focus in on the particular frequency range. Now, because this is just a single sound and it's a kick drum, so most of the energy's in the low frequency range, don't really need to use that here. So using a gate like this, I might just use it as almost like a shaper. It's making that distortion because I've got the release set too low. Sometimes you can use that as an effect, but I'll just raise it up a bit. I get a bit more snap into the kick. That's without it. Introducing a bit of click into the sound, which is useful. I'm not actually using these other bands, so I'll just turn them off so they won't be using any additional processing power. So the next one along here is we have an equalizer. So it's a very fully featured equalizer. We've got a high pass filter and a low pass filter. We've got a low shelving filter and a high shelving filter. And we've got 8 bands of EQ that we can use. So when I turn this on, each of the 8 bands in the center have 2 shaping modes. We've got a band shelf and a proportional one. Proportional one is more surgical, where the band shelf is more of a bell type. And I can adjust the Q either here or in my control section down here. Give it a bit more low frequency energy there, and I'm going to use the bell shape to focus in on more areas. Generally when I'm boosting with EQ, I want to be affecting more, and we're using wider EQs, and when I'm cutting I generally tend to use more narrow EQs, make it more transparent. Now the other great feature that we have here obviously is the dynamic mode, and this is not activated. You're just setting your controls for your EQ in a static way that you do with most EQs. When you turn on dynamic mode, you've got a threshold here, and I can set it to go up or down. So say if I wanted to accentuate that particular frequency. When I bring the threshold down, you can see my EQ curve here is starting to actually increase the gain. Give it a boost even more. So every time the kick hits, it will automatically increase frequencies around 83 Hertz. Let's bring that down a bit more actually. If I was to do maybe something I wanted to correct something, I could flip it into down. And now if I bring my actual gain down, every time the kick hits, it's actually going to reduce the gain. Bring my threshold up, nothing happens. So I start to bring the threshold down. So if I wanted to take some of the click out of this, I can maybe sweep this up here. Bring my gain down a bit more. That there, kind of scooping out some of the mid frequencies there, making it sound a bit more hollow. Don't really need that effect here, so I'm just going to go back to my original setting and just give it a bit of a bump at around 60 Hertz. So we've got two compressors. Each compressor can either be in vintage mode, which simulates an analog compressor, or in digital mode, which reacts quicker and is more transparent, where in vintage mode, depending on the settings you use, you can even say, if I go quite hard here, you can hear some distortion being introduced to the sound. And we've got a dry wet control here, so if I want to do some sort of like parallel compression, I can dial that in there. Or I can put it into digital mode, so I can be more maybe aggressive with the compression without introducing any distortion to the signal. Again, this is 3-band, so I can solo the low band. That's the mid band, and they got a high band here. So even if you're not applying any compression to these, it's a useful tool if you want to actually just shape the frequency of the sound that's going through it. So you've got a 3-band sort of balance EQ. So if I want to bring out more of that, or more of the top end on the kick. And then like the other controls, I can kind of got a master dry wet control. So in each of these, we've got a side chain on it as well. So you've got various sources for the side chain. It can be, if I put it to internal band 1, it means it's just going to be the same. Whatever's in band 1 is going to be triggering it. If I put it to band 2, it means if I solo this, any of that material there is going to be causing band 1 to be triggered, or it's going to be controlling the threshold on this here. And we'll look at it in some of the other sounds that we're using in our mix. Because we've got two compressors, we can use maybe one of them for gentle compression, and then the second one we could maybe even use it, if I put the ratio all the way up, we can have it as an actual limiter. So it's just taming a few of the higher peaks in the signal. So bypass. So we're not getting much level increase, so that's with the Neutron in. And then without it, it's only 3 dB less. If I was to say even match that up, bring the output down. So we're only hearing the effect of the Neutron and we're not getting any gain boost. Bring a lot more presence and definition into the sound. Just going to bring in a snare. This time I'm going to look at some of the modules that we didn't look at in the previous example. We have an exciter here. Again, this is multi-band like our compressor. And so I'll just turn off 2 of the bands so we can just focus on 1 band. So what this allows you to do is add various types of or flavors of harmonic distortion to your signal. Now, if your signal is a bit lifeless or a bit dull and needs a bit of sparkle, harmonic distortion can really help it cut through in the mix. So our drive control here, turn that all the way up, it can really start to distort and obliterate the sound. Just leave it up there for now. You've got 4 modes to choose from. Warm tends to be a bit subtle. Tape, depending on your drive setting, can also be quite transparent. You've got a tube mode, which tends to add more odd harmonics to the sounds, and I think it preserves the transients a bit more than the tape or the warm mode. And then retro tends to be a bit more aggressive. But in any of these modes, you can go quite aggressive with your drive. Then you've got a blend option here, so you can dial back on it there. So currently that's applying it to the whole frequency spectrum. If I turn on one of the other bands and just solo that, I can hear what that's going to process. So I can set my crossover point here. I could add in another band, but we'll just work with 2 bands here at the minute. So again, I'll turn this on, add some drive into that. It's adding some nice sizzle to the top there. Might blend it back a bit. If you find that it's adding too much high frequency content, you've also got a high shelving filter here that you can dial back on some of that. So again, if I adjust my output gain, they're pretty much the same there. You can see that without any increase in loudness, I'm getting a lot more definition in the sound. Now the last module we're going to turn on here is our transient shaper. So again, this is also multi-band. We've got 3 bands, low, mid, high. Just going to use it on the low here, so I can make the attack of the sound more aggressive. And I can also shape the response of that for something more smooth, something more linear, or something sharper. With any of these modules, you can also reorder them, so that I can put the transient shaper before the exciter, or on some of the other modules that we already looked at, say on the kick drum. Let's call it up there. Currently I have the EQ before the compression, but maybe if I thought that the compression was making the sound a bit duller, or for some other effect, I could put the EQ actually after the compressor. So it gives you full control to mess with your signal chain to get various results. Next item I'm going to look at is the bass. So on this item here, maybe we can enhance it with some EQ. Now, always with bass, when you're EQing it, you want to make sure that you're not having any conflicts with the kick drum, which is generally occupying a similar frequency range. There's a great feature here in the EQ section where if I turn on masking here, you can select any of the other neutrons that you have currently instantiated in your mix. So you might have noticed that in each neutron that I'm using, I have it named. So this one is called bass. On the kick drum, if I call that one up, see, I've named that kick, and I've named, say, the other one snare, and so on. So on my bass, when I call this up, I can select any of the other neutrons that I'm using. So I want to look at the kick drum. So the top EQ that we're looking at here is my bass track, and down below here we've got my kick drum. So what this spectrum, this kind of like highlighted section here, these kind of streaks, showing where there's going to be frequency conflict. So obviously down in this area here, if I start to try and EQ there, that's going to tell me that I've got a conflict in that area with the kick drum. So what I can do here is that I can turn on inverse link. Now any EQing that I make, you can see that if I cut on one, it boosts on the other, and vice versa. So on my kick drum, on my bass, I'm just going to cut a bit in that area, and you can see that it's alternatively boosted on the kick drum track, so that there's going to be no clash between those two signals. So that's good. So because I've scooped out some of the low end on this here, I'm going to use my low shelving EQ to enhance the low low end on the bass a bit more. So it's currently just using the shelf shape. I'm going to actually switch it into vintage. As you can see, it's now also affecting the kick drum as well. Whereas the bass is using the vintage shelf, where the kick drum is just using the regular one. If I didn't want these to be controlling each other, I can just turn the inverse link off again. That's the kick drum by itself. That's just the bass. So the vintage shape emulates the Pultec EQ shape. What that does is when you're actually boosting the EQ, you can see it's also creating a dip here. Depending on the frequencies you're at, somewhere between 700 and I think 1000 kilohertz. And that's, they claim, is the secret to the Pultec's sound. So we're getting quite a bit of boost there, so I'm just going to dial back on the output level. Go into my compressor. I'll leave it on the digital mode for now. If I did want to, say, sidechain the bass with the kick drum, I could turn on my sidechain section here. And currently it's on internal band 1. Now what I want it to be is coming from, or the sidechain to be coming from an external source. So I can put this to extern full. It's going to use Ableton's sidechain configuration. So say if I was to, say, maybe make a duplicate of the kick track, imagine this was a duplicate, and put this to my bass. For the, rather than have it on track in, now I can see that it has, I can route it to the actual Neutron. And now you can see that the kick drum is triggering the sidechain on the compressor here. Obviously that's not used to me because I want to actually hear the kick drum, so I'll put that back to master. I'm going to use an auxiliary. So I'll turn up auxiliary number 3 there. And over here, I can just turn this off because I don't need to actually hear that. I'm going to route this to the bass. And then I'll put that to Neutron. Turn it back on. And now we can see that the signal that's in a return channel is now coming in here. Getting a bit of pumping there. Those two sounds interacting with each other. So I'll just pick out one more sound here and we'll have a look at applying Neutron to it. So on this sound here, got nothing turned on so far. Let me just go to the EQ. Now, we can see here in our frequency spectrum here that there is some low frequency energy down here. And because we've already been working, say, on our kick drum and our bass, this area here could be a problem. So I could scoop some of that out there using EQ, or I could maybe go something to like a compressor. So because we have our different bands here, I'm going to turn on the low band, and we got the mid band. We can set the crossover frequency, and we can set our detection filter. So that's the low frequency. That's kind of the stuff that we maybe want to control. And this is solo this. This kind of nasally kind of stuff is the stuff that I want to preserve. So what I can do is that I can, now that we've set up the mid band on the internal sidechain, I can put that to band 2. Now, whatever's happening in band 2 here is now triggering the threshold of the compressor in band 1. That's without it. Blending it back in. Right, kick in the exciter there. Kick up the drive a bit. We do this in the mix for some context. So you can really make it cut through. I just want to kind of just blend it in. If you want to do, we can maybe do something creative with the gate. So rather than have the sidechain from the kick going to the bass, I can select and trigger it to the ARP, put it to the neutrino. So now we can see the kick drum coming in there. You can hear that kind of chopping in and out with the kick drum. Hopefully through those examples there you can see the power of using Neutron 2 as a channel strip. Really only scratch the surface of what it can do. There's a lot more features, not only within the individual sections here, but also in the master section. I've also got things like Track Assistant, which we'll look into in future videos. This has been Alan Gleeson for Crossfadr. Remember to click on the subscribe button and the notification bell to keep up to date on our new videos.